He served 5 consecutive terms in the U.S. Senate, and in the last few of his 30 years there, John Warner became one of the Republican Party's most active voices on climate legislation. And now, even though Senator Warner has left Congress, the Virginian is still out in front of the climate discussion. Senator John Warner, welcome to Clean Skies Sunday.
Thank you for the contribution you make on this important subject.
A pleasure to have you here, sir. Let's talk about your current joint project you have underway with the Pew Environment Group, getting the word out about our climate needs.
Well, it really started almost 2 years ago in the Senate when I was chairman of the Armed Services Committee at that time. And more the retired military who are free to talk with me came and said, look, this climate thing has the potential of affecting our future roles and missions. And I said, you know, I think you're right. So in 2008, joining with Senator Clinton, who was on the Senate Armed Services Committee, my committee, we put in a short piece of legislation which said the Secretary of Defense shall start planning with respect to climatic changes for the future roles and missions of our forces. And today the Department of Defense, which incidentally is the largest consumer of energy in the United States, the single largest entity, as a matter of fact maybe in the world, they're doing a lot of good work towards reducing the reliance on overseas energy, conserving energy within the military, and planning for climate change contingencies. Because you saw, take the tsunami. Now, I'm not saying that was a consequence of global warming, but it happened. Where did they turn? To the United States Navy to bring in a carrier. The carrier provided the water that was needed. The helicopters transported the food. So our military historically, at the direction of the President, who's Commander-in-Chief of the military, responded to natural disasters in various parts of the world. And then take, for example, the nation of Somalia. We were drawn into that battle largely because of political problems and uncertainties. And it was a sad chapter in our military history, the losses we took. But it was a consequence in Somalia of years of drought, which had deprived that nation of its ability to do the necessary things to provide food for its people, provide for the basic needs of their people. The severity of the climate changes in that area of Africa.
So often, Senator, on Capitol Hill, we hear climate issues tied to national security in terms of our dependence on foreign oil primarily. But a quote from you addresses a different aspect, and if I could read it back to you, sir. Military and security experts agree that if left unchecked, global warming could increase instability and lead to conflict in already fragile regions of the world. You said we've seen this in Somalia. Are there other hot spots that come to mind?
Well, you can go on up into the other areas of Africa where you see that problem. You take Indonesia, who suffered through a lot of problems. Instability can be the direct result of dramatic climate changes. Severity of a storm, or prolonged drought, or water alone can precipitate between nations and start mass migrations from one nation to another. And that tends to take those nations which have a very fragile sovereignty, often a new sovereign, little experiment in democracy, and topple it just like that. And then into that void it's a haven for people who have interests contrary to the freedoms that we enjoy in the Western world.
Regarding what we can potentially do about that, Senator, and legislative action, we are waiting for the Senate over the next month or so to introduce and then discuss climate legislation. You are so closely associated with what minor successes there have been regarding climate bills in the Senate. Your name was on the first bill regarding climate ever to pass out of committee in 2006. A small victory.
With Joe Lieberman,
yes,
who's there active, a very fine senator. And we were both on the Environment and Public Works Committee. We had the support of Barbara Boxer, who was then the chairman, and we got that out of the committee. I was the only Republican that voted for it, and it got to the floor, and we did have several days of debate. Then through the exercise of parliamentary rules, which are available to all senators, the bill just stopped, and it wasn't going to go anywhere. We didn't have the support at that time of the administration. I'm not faulting George Bush and his team, but this wasn't on their agenda like it's now on the agenda of President Obama's administration. He's very much encouraging moving forward on climate change.
Senator, what was the difference between 2006, when you had some momentum over climate legislation, and last year, the summer of 2008, when the Boxer-Lieberman-Warner bill fell flat altogether?
Frankly, the complexity of this issue. And I would say in my 30 years in the United States Senate, this question of climate change is perhaps the most complex and diverse piece of legislation that I've ever seen, because it affects everybody in America. Small business, big business, little transportation systems, big transportation, manufacturing, everybody's involved. Agriculture's involved. So it's the entire economy that's affected by what we do or don't do with respect to climate change. I personally am in favor of our nation moving forward with a piece of legislation so we define first what we do know about the problem now, and what corrective changes all of us, not just industry, but every individual, should be working to try and eliminate the very large amount of CO2 and other greenhouse gases that are being released into the atmosphere, which are causing, clearly before our eyes, changes in the Arctic ice, the seed chain, that is the food chain in the sea, which supports aquatic life, the severity of droughts. Do you realize that Texas is going through perhaps the worst drought and the most prolonged drought in their history? They're just very strange situations taking place. So I think it's important that we as a nation address it. I'm hopeful Congress, the House has passed legislation. I'm hopeful the Senate will do so, and that a bill will come out so we have a framework and an increased public knowledge on the issues of climate change.
Chairman Boxer has discussed the fact that Waxman-Markey, the ACES Act, which passed through the House, will be to a large extent her guide for writing legislation. You compared the 2006 process, using the old adage of sausage making, to what's going on this year, and there were so many concessions that had to be added to this bill. Is it possible to get something effective together when there are such disparate interests involved?
Well, that's the challenge to leadership. And the Senate leadership, notably Senator Reid, has, I think, very cleverly decided it's not just the domain of the Environment and Public Works Committee, chaired by Senator Boxer, and she recognized that, but the legislation has to be a composite of the energy factors, the tax factors, so there's the Energy Committee, Tax Committee. There's 6 committees that are now working on various aspects, foreign relations, working as preparing for the Copenhagen conference. So wisely, the leadership of the Senate has said, not just one committee this time, there'll be 6. Each of you bring to the leadership your bills, and the leadership will synthesize those bills and then submit a leadership bill to the floor. And that will be the impetus for further hearings on the committees and then hopefully floor action.
Senator, regarding the climate conference by the UN coming up in December in Copenhagen, what does the administration need to have in hand to arrive at the table most effectively? Is the passage of the House bill enough, or does the Senate need to take action as well?
Optimally, it would be a law that the United States has adopted. That means the Senate has got to have a bill. The House and the Senate go to a conference where they reconcile the differences between the bill. Bill then goes to the President for signature, and then it becomes law. That's the optimal. But I'm hopeful that if that is not achievable, and I'm not going to speculate, nor should anybody else, because it's just too much to be done. Let's be optimistic, but I wouldn't want to raise hopes beyond the realities of the situation. That would be the optimal thing. The next thing, the President's looking at an executive order, which he's going to put out regarding what's going on in the federal side of our government. So there are a lot of things the President could put together. The bill would be best, but there are, I presume, fallbacks.
30 years in the Senate, now a partner with the Pew Environment Group. Senator John Warner, pleasure to have you with us, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.